Alright, let's begin. So for this video, we're going to be talking about how text is managed in the game. So our text strings in this game have a storage for score, life, and initials. These are the three different types of form text can come in this game. So we have the different offsets for them. The initial offset is pretty much always based off of the score position, since whenever initials are shown, except for when you input them with a high score, which I'll cover later, they are always offset by some amount away from the text. So whenever that happens, we take in a score value and update our score. We can update our score in two ways. One, by just getting the score, which we updated as appropriate. If there's no score, we just give 2 zeros. If it's less than 10, it's 0 plus whatever the score was that was given. Or if there is more than that, we just convert the score and we draw the text. Whenever we need to update the text, we push glyphs onto it. So these glyphs are using a factory where we either convert the character to an index, or if we have an integer, we can just convert it use the integer index from there. Every time we add a glyph, we have to increase the offset so that the glyphs aren't drawn on top of each other. And once we are done, we recycle the glyphs. The alternative is getting a position offset as well. This is used by the high score list for when we need to shift our scores around. So when a player gets a score and they need to shift them, we can pass in what the high score offset was prior, and then we can shift them downwards as appropriate. So once again, if the score is 0, then we just draw 2 zeros. Less than 10 is 0 in the number. More than 10 is the score itself. We push the glyphs down. Every time we finish, we update the offset, and then we recycle the glyphs. For updating lives, whenever the player gains an extra life or is damaged, then we will update the text for it. So this takes in however many lives the player currently has and does a for loop. Every time we will push back the glyph, I use the % symbol to represent the blaster on the centipede file you gave us. And then every time we increase the offset. Once we're done, we recycle the glyphs, and then that's the lives. Initials can be done by either giving it a string or glyphs. The glyphs are used by the high score manager for when we need to shift things around on the list. And then the updated initials is used by the high score list for initializing them. So for this, we get the glyph at the index of the input. We convert it to the glyph index, and then we decrease the offset, and then recycle the glyphs. Same thing down here, except now instead of trying to convert the text, we have glyphs already. So what we do here is we take the glyph at the input position, we get its index, and then create the offset from it. So this way we can copy glyphs and shift them around. And then we have a bunch of getters, and then on the destructor we recycle everything. In the text manager, this is where we store the highest score, as well as the players 1 and 2. All of their lives and scores are stored in these two spots. During idle play, we have the current text set to be the high score. Otherwise, it's the first player text, which will swap every time the blaster is destroyed. And then we have a getter for the HUD, which I'll talk about in a minute. Updating score is managed here. So during scenes, level 1 controller. So whenever we process our scores, this is where we can, if we have a new score, we update the score text. So here, this will have the text score get updated. And then it also has the HUD update that string. Same thing with the lives. Whenever a player gains or loses a life, it updates the lives and tells the HUD to do the same. And then whenever we need to update the high scores, we have the text manager receive it. This is done at the start of play. So at the start of the idle play, it receives whatever the high score list currently is, and tells the HUD what to do with it. So that's the text manager. For the HUD, we have on creation, it gets the player count. The player count tells it whether or not to display just player 1 or both player 1 and player 2. It has a function to receive scores from the high score list for during the idle play. So it gets the high scores, the score length, initials, and the press start sentence. Excuse me. During the draw step, it uses dirty flags to determine whether or not to draw what it wants. So we have if the high scores is not a null pointer, then we can iterate through them and get the scores and initials. If we have display 0, then we will draw whatever the highest score is. If we have display 1, which is for the first player's score, we draw player 1 scores and lives, and display 2 is player 2 scores and lives. So if I were to put a breakpoint in both of these and run, you can see that nothing is paused because we haven't gotten to anything. If I press 1, it starts to activate display 1, so it will start running the game. If I just break it real quick and then restart for the sake of time, and then I press 2, now display 2 turns on, and display 1 will also be turned on, and it will display both. Lastly, for input initials, we have a sentence for it, the new high score. Whenever a high score is updated, let me do them show and talk. So whenever we get to the high score, it will ask for input. If we input any characters, it will add them onto the screen. So let me just confirm that I get a high score. It will add them onto the screen. If we ever press the backspace, it will delete them from the screen. And once we get to 3 key presses, we will send the high score to the high score manager to see if we need to put where it belongs on the list. So anytime we type in something, the key pressed integer value goes up. Anytime we hit the backspace, it decreases until it's equal to 0. So if I just quickly destroy right here, input initials. So we go L. So now it registered we have an input. Do backspace. So now it's going to delete it. Do O. Adds, P, adds, backspace, remove, backspace, remove. Then once we have 4 different 3 different inputs, excuse me, not 4. Once we have 4 different inputs, it will go out of here. We have 3 different key presses, so it will start cleaning itself out. So it will recycle all of its glyphs. Got the header symbols and then the initials symbols. So it'll start recycling itself until it's done, and then it recycles the header as well. No, I can't pause that, damn. Let me check past. And that is text.